Hello, Captain Boring here with the new video. It will be a follow-up video of my previous one where I was describing how we can connect GTX 1650 using PCIExpress Razer slot to the old Lenovo laptop. In this video I will show you the performance test, some in-game videos where I will be comparing how the GTX 1650 performs on different laptops and my new gaming rig. I've also done some performance tests on the Blender and 3DF Zephyr, which will show you if it makes sense to have external graphic card for the computational work. For the game performance test, I've selected 4 games. 2 of those are a newer one and 2 of those are slightly older ones. First test is Detroit Become a Human. Second one is Wolfenstein New Colossus. Third one is Tomb Raider, and fourth one is Bioshock Infinite. For the computation performance test, I decided to use the Blender, which I'm using quite often, and also 3DF Zephyr, which is 3D reconstruction software for photogrammetry. For the game performance testing, I decided to create in-game videos from all of the games. I will be showing it with some statistic in one screen, so you will be able to compare directly how the GTX 1650 performs with Lenovo W520, Lenovo W541 and Ryzen 3900X. Also, I've created some other videos using only the discrete Quadro graphics, so you will be able to compare how it performs with the GTX 1650 and with the Quadro graphics. Let's dive into the testing. The first test is 3D Mark 2011. It's pretty old synthetic benchmark which evaluates the CPU and the GPU performance. And the reason I've chosen this one is because it's free and it's able to run on all the test machines. If you look on the tests, we will see massive difference between Lenovo laptops with Quadro and GTX 1650. We are talking about 8 times better performance with the GPU. But what really strikes me was that the Ryzen 9 performance was around maybe 10% more than in comparison to GTX 1650 on the laptop. Which really pissed me off because I've spent €1,000 on it and it was not giving me any good performance. Now let's move to the first game. The first game is Detroit Become a Human. It's a very nice game. It has really high performance requirements. So I've run it at 1080p on high settings and for comparison also on the 1080p low settings. When you look at the chart, you might be wondering why there are no Quadro graphics card. The reason is quite simple. They are pretty old and Detroit is not running on them. So that's the reason why they are not there. And let's dive into test results. You may look at the first glance that with the GTX 1650 as an external graphics card, it looks pretty good. But if you look at the minimum FPS, then it's basically unplayable. The difference between low FPS and max FPS is incredible. It's mainly caused because it's utilizing the bus pretty heavily, especially in the complex scenes. And this is the reason why it's becoming unplayable also on the GTX 1650 as the external. And there is not much difference between W520 and W541. If you look on the Ryzen 9, you are still getting pretty decent FPS min values. So on the high settings, we are not going below 34 FPS, which gives us a good performance overall. If you look onto the FPS max, you might be wondering why it's on 60 in both scenarios.
The reason is simple. The Detroit doesn't allow higher FPS, and I assume the reason is that it's originating from the PlayStation. So that's probably the reason why there is FPS capping. Overall, we will see in the video how it goes. So let's dive into it. So we can see there are three different scenes. Left one is W520 with GTX 1650. The middle one is W541 with GTX 1650. And on the right side there is Ryzen 9 GTX 1650. You can see the min FPS, average, max, and GPU and memory and CPU usage. So if you compare it, you can see that on the left side and the middle there's starter, even though the scene are basically the same because it's intro scene. And if you look at the CPU, you can see that Ryzen 9 is basically doing nothing, and Intel cores i7 are basically utilized at almost 100%. And if you look into the FPS, you can see that on the same screen, Ryzen 9 with GTX 1650 is at its maximum, so it's 60 FPS, and it's dropping very, very low. And if you look at the Lenovo, you see that at the first glance it looks like there's enough FPS, but if you look at the minimum, it's dropping very, very deep. And especially in this scene, if you look on that, it's basically unplayable because it's really there's a heavy stutter. And if you look at the GPU usage, you can see that it's not getting enough data to work at full speed. So on the left side, it's running like 70%, and on the right side, it's going almost up to 100.
Please confirm
So
payment.
you see that for this particular game,
Payment confirmed.
the GTX 1650 as an external graphic
complete.
card is not good. Let's move to comparison low detail and high detail. It's on Lenovo W520 with GTX 1650, and you see that there's a huge difference, but I don't think it will actually make the game playable. So I would definitely not recommend it. You can see the massive difference between memory usage. On the left side there is a high setting, and on the right side there is a low setting, and it's more than 1 gigabyte more memory needed for the high setting. And also, if you look into the utilization on the high setting, it's running at 100% pretty often. Next game in our list is Tomb Raider. It's been played in ultimate setting at 1080p, and we can now look into the chart. So as you expect, the Quadro graphics are really struggling, so it's unplayable, but they are still able to at least render it somehow. But if you look into GTX 1650 on the laptops, it's pretty playable. The FPS is not dropping under 25 frames per second, so it's still playable on both laptops, and there are no massive drops in FPS. If you look into the Ryzen, so as expected, it's much better performance, but I don't think it's actually matters in this case. So you will be good also playing this game on the laptops. Let's dive into video. So on the left side, you see the W520 with GTX 1650. On the right side, you will see the Ryzen 9, and in the middle, there is W541. You can see that the performance is good on all of them. It's pretty playable, and you will get nice results playing it.
Sorry.
Next game on the list is Wolfenstein New Colossus, played on ultra setting at 1080p. You can see that there is missing Lenovo W520. The reason is that it was not possible to run the new Colossus on that laptop because of old graphic card. So we have only 4 competitors, and as expected, W541 is struggling with Quadro graphics, so it's unplayable on it. But if you look on the GTX 1650 as an external card, we can see that the game is sort of playable. It's not dropping below 25 even on the FPS min, so it will be good enough for some gaming experience. Just one note, I had a lot of problems with W541 laptop, and I think the reason why I had the problems running it on GTX 1650 is that basically it's impossible to completely disable the discrete graphic on that laptop, unlike on W520. From the chart, it is clear that one-line PCIExpress is limiting the performance of the graphic card. So in this game, it's pretty obvious that the external solution is not good for it. All right, let's dive into in-game videos.
It's you. Take this. They're looking for you. Oh, shit! Here they come.
This is our U-boat now, Nazi. You ain't getting it back. Hang on, Anya. I'm on my way.
Microwaves will turn you into mush. You don't want to be mush. Shit, do you? Okay, wait. Wait. Okay, now, come to me. Be careful, the floor is very...
It's you. Take this. They're looking for you. Oh, shit! Here they come.
This is our U-boat now, Nazi. You ain't getting it back. Hang on, Anya. I'm on my way.
Stop! Blaskovich! Freeze! Do not move a muscle until I say it's okay, alright? Alright? Don't even pass wind! Microwaves will turn you into mush. You don't want to be mush. Shit, do you? Okay, wait. Wait. Okay, now, come to me.
Another game in the list is Bioshock Infinite with ultra setting at 1080p. If you look into chart, we will see that there are massive difference between FPS max, FPS min. So it's clear that some rapid changes in the scene are not able to cope with one-line PCIExpress. As you can see, it's still playable on GTX1650 on W541. On W520 there are some massive drops, but it's not affecting the overall performance that much, so it's still playable. And again, Ryzen 9 is about 2 times better when it comes for FPS min, so it has much better performance. If you look onto the Quadro graphics on laptops, it's still unplayable. Okay, and now we can dive into in-game videos.
If I told you a man could hoist
The Scopuli are on the loose. Who will hunt them down? And in the right way, wonder of the world.
He's bold. He's the amazing handyman. Only in our fair city will you see such amazing feats of technology.
Dear friend, have you ever lost a penny to a vending machine? Has a pay telephone ever refused to connect you with a beloved spouse? 4 flavors.
Howdy, sailor. What port do you call home? Any port in the storm?
Have you ever seen anything like it?
You look so sad.
Sad.
Boxophone! Boxophone! Hear your voice from the past.
Hot dogs! Hot dogs! Alexander Hot Dogs!
The advances in science.
Have you used one yet?
Soon enough, think and look test. Would you believe me? If I told you a man could hoist a 1-ton
Industries for our troops now available to all citizens of Colombia.
city safe, nothing to do you.
He's the amazing handyman. Only in our
Seen anything like it?
You look so sad. Dear friend, have you ever lost a penny to a vending machine? Has a pay telephone ever refused to connect you with a beloved spouse? 4 flavors. That many?
Howdy, sailor. What port do you call home? Any port in the storm?
could lift that entire booth over his head.
There was the last game, and now we can move to the computational performance. The first contestant is Blender, and the first test is viewport FPS, which shows how many FPS the computer is able to generate while playing back the scene in the viewport. So from the chart you can see the Ryzen 9 is basically twice as fast than the other competitors. The reason is that this is basically heavily dependent on the CPU performance. If you look on the other test machines, you can see that W541 with Quadro and GTX1650 are basically almost the same, and they are much faster than W520. And as I said, this test is highly CPU dependent. Okay, so that was the viewport rendering, and the scene render. It's much more important and much more interesting. So you can see that with Ryzen 9 we get 3 minutes 55 seconds, and with W520 and Quadro we get 54 minutes 50 seconds, which is incredible difference. So in this case I would definitely recommend external graphic card, because you will save basically 50 minutes on very small render. And if we compare the W520 and 541 with GTX, there is not that much difference, so you can see that it's highly GPU sensitive. The next computational test is rendering with 3ds Zephyr, which is a 3D reconstruction software for generating 3D models from the photo images. I split the test into different parts. So the gray one is mesh texturing, the orange one is the dense point cloud reconstruction, and the blue one is the sparse reconstruction. If we look into the chart, we can see that for dense point cloud reconstruction, which is the most difficult calculation, it takes double as much for the Quadro graphic to calculate that, and on the Ryzen 9 it's basically a third of what you get with the GTX 1650 as the external card. All of that is caused by the Ryzen 9 performance, because it's 12 core and it's able to utilize the graphics card at 100%. Nevertheless, I still think that it's a very good option to have an external graphic card for the CUDA acceleration. You might not get as good performance as with the Ryzen 9 or any other desktop CPU, but still you will get much better performance than just using the discrete Quadro graphics.
Alright, we have reached the end of our video and it's time for a conclusion. So, is it really worth it to buy a graphics card and connect it through the eGPU riser? Well, the answer is not that simple. I will look into the answer from three different perspectives. First perspective, is it really a good option for playing new games on your old laptop? Well, the answer is simply no. It probably will work at some level, but you will be wasting your card's potential, because there is a huge limitation on the bandwidth of the PCIExpress card slot. So the graphics card won't have enough data for it. That's the first problem. And second problem, it's more likely that you don't have good enough processor to feed your graphics card. So I would not recommend it for playing new games. Second perspective is playing old games, and then I would say sort of yes, because older games are not that memory hungry and the CPU is not a limitation at some level. And the third perspective is using graphics card as an accelerator for computation, like rendering, encoding video and so on. And then I would definitely say it's a very good option if you are not able to buy a new desktop or some better laptop. Then you will get some decent performance and you will save a lot of time, and it's really worth it. So thank you for watching, and if you are wondering how it's possible that this game is playing so well on this laptop, even though this graphics card is in reality not connected, then the answer is simple. It's just a YouTube video. So see you later.